All right, guys, welcome to the Beef Stew, episode 7. I'm here with Dr. Blood Money. This is going to be more of like a Beef Stew mini as we're getting ready to do longer episodes. We're probably going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984. And is it 1984?
I think it might be 1884.
Oh, jeez. And we might be doing some other videos, but we thought for this, we're both Tom Cruise fans, hardcore. If
Cruise Control.
And so Blood Money hasn't heard the Tom Cruise on-set meltdown on Mission Impossible 7.
That's right. I have not.
So there's some let's preface this with some things. So apparently Tom Cruise has been putting a lot of money out of pocket to be able to film this movie because a lot of people aren't allowed to film anything right now. I know that they're filming The Matrix 4 in Germany, but Tom Cruise has been paying for all the safety protocols to film this movie in the UK. They were supposed to be shooting Mission Impossible 7 and 8 back to back after Fallout was so successful, with Christopher McQuarrie returning. So, from what I've read, a lot of cast and crew members weren't wearing their masks. They were not social distancing. They weren't obeying the rules. And Cruise was he was sick of it. He'd had enough. And he had to let the people know how he felt. So let me ask you this before we get into this. Tom Cruise is a mystery. And there's a lot of rumors about Tom Cruise and a lot of things. His relationship
An
with...
enigma.
Yes.
An enigma.
His relationship with his father. That's very complicated. The homosexuality rumors that he's gay and the Scientology thing is this big gay cover-up. His relationship with David Miscavige, the head of Scientology. There was a super hot chick. They were trying to line him up girlfriends, and I remember there was this like sexy woman that was on the remake of V, that Alien series about the lizard people. And she's also been in a
Not
couple...
familiar.
I wish I could look her up. You probably know who she is, but she's this gorgeous woman, and she was dating him for a little while, and she didn't like how David Miscavige was around all the time. And apparently Tom Cruise went up to her and he goes, listen. He goes, LRH, me, David Miscavige. And then so she got kicked out of the relationship. So he hardly sees his child that he had with Katie Holmes. It's strange. I don't know if he's...
Also, why was he cast in Valkyrie? The biggest mystery. And why didn't he do a German accent? We could be laughing about that German accent to this day.
Yeah, Cruise does that thing where like you've never seen him do accents. He kind of does a British accent in Interview with the Vampire, but that British accent, like every actor does. I'm drinking a Lion Lugels, whatever the fuck this is, toasted Bock, which is a very delicious beer. Um, do you think what validity do you give to the gay thing? Because I used to be lesser on it. I'm probably like 85% now that he's gay.
Zero.
Zero. No chance.
0%. I'm 100% sure he's pansexual. I believe the term is.
Okay, so he has sex with the person that he's attracted to. It's
What?
not about gender.
Yeah, whatever old L. Ron Hubbard
Well,
wants him to.
well, I wonder that if it's even like an asexuality. I don't even know if he's gay or if he just isn't a sexual being. Because he's never been sexual in any of his movies. I mean, that's been one of his... Excluding, I'd say, Risky Business, I think one of the weird things about his career is he's never really been good as a romantic lead. And his
Excuse me, take my breath away.
Yeah, where he's like biting her, like he's like licking her lips. That weird fucking sex scene.
The most erotic sex scene you'll ever see.
The least
In Top
sexual,
Gun.
the least sexual tension that's ever been in a Hollywood movie. Like, it doesn't seem like he wants to fuck women in any of the movies he's in. We talked about this in the Jerry Maguire thing. How
Well,
he's
neither does
crazy.
Cary Grant. Oh, wait.
Oh no. That Rock
Actually,
Hudson
Cary
guy.
Grant really does seem like he wants to, but
Well, that's
perhaps
the
he had more range.
because there's only two ways this goes. One, he's been gay his whole career, which is a rumor with a lot of actors because I don't know if people know this, but most guys who get into ballet or stage acting and all that, they're gay. Most theater actors on Broadway are gay, but in Hollywood, there was a long time you couldn't be openly gay. So either he's gay and he's been hiding it his whole career and having fake marriages and hiding it through Scientology with John Travolta, who's also always been rumored to be gay. Or he's a straight guy and he's just so fucking weird that people assume that means he's gay instead of that he's crazy. So I don't know.
I've never cared, and I don't say that as some sort of
I don't care. It's just, that's
uh,
part of all of this is the Scientology things associated with the gay rumors. Well, I've also heard that he's disconnecting from Scientology. I've been reading those rumors that he's been having issues with David Miscavige and he's actually might be leaving the church, which would be the biggest news because he's been a member since the 80s.
a bold move.
Well, this is what I wonder about this meltdown. I don't know how much of this meltdown is actually he's just pissed on the set. I think it's a few things. I think this year's been stressful for a lot of people, obviously, and I don't think Tom Cruise is an exception despite his wealth. I think he's a guy who's a workaholic and he likes making movies and doing things, and I think that COVID's obviously affected him being able to make this movie, and I think it's driving him crazy. So a lot of this is him just yelling and having a blow up on a set, but I've been to grocery stores or seen this in just my day to day life where people get in fights or situations happen just over the mask thing. And it's political. So I don't know. Some people are on his side and other people are saying he's crazy, but you haven't listened to this yet, but if you've ever been yelled at by a boss, and don't be wrong, I don't think you should talk to adults this way. I don't think like if you're an adult, you should be yelling at other adults like they're children. I
Should
don't
only be screaming at children.
exactly. I don't think it's good behavior. But the Christian Bale thing happened years ago where he yelled at that cinematographer. This isn't that different. But we'll listen to a little bit of it here, and then we'll start reacting to it. Um, you haven't heard this, right?
No, I have not heard any of it.
Okay. You're in for. I mean, this is like. I haven't heard. I
Don't
haven't.
overhype it.
I don't think
You've
it's.
already made the sale.
I mean, it's okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right.
You're back here in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every studio at night. Insurance companies. Producers. And they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs.
We're creating thousands of jobs, you motherfuckers. Now, let's say you're like a production assistant on the set of Mission Impossible 7 and Tom Cruise is yelling at you like this. What's going through your head?
I would think I'm honored. Like I'm honored to be part of this crazy rant.
I mean, this is like Frank T.J. Mackey shit. Like when he flips the table over Magnolia, like, see, I have to wonder is how close is this to real Cruise? I've, because Jay Moore talks about him and makes him sound like the most amazing guy ever. People talk about him, say how great he is, and he remembers everyone's name. But then I've heard other things where he's always like yelled at his staff members and his crew, and is super intense like this. Because he has to be an intense fucking guy with all the motorcycles and airplanes and climbing buildings and shit. I mean, sometimes I wish he was more real because whenever he's in interviews, he's just like, "Oh, golly gee, I really like that. That's fun and happy," and he doesn't like if this is who he really is, I want this Tom Cruise on Jimmy Kimmel. I like all the use of fuck though. Tom Cruise hasn't said fuck in a movie in a while. This is like, oh wait, this is Les Grossman. That's what this is.
Yeah. He was pulling from real life, apparently.
I don't ever want to see it again. And if you don't do it, you're fired. If I see you do it again, you're gone. And anyone on this crew does it. That's it. And you too. And you too. And you.
I like the picture he's pointing. And you two! And you two! And you! This is like
Yeah.
I want the truth!
One of them's Michelle Monaghan.
Honestly, I think this is his best performance in a long time.
So naturalistic.
Yeah, like, I've missed this Tom Cruise. So how are you feeling about this so far?
I feel like it's normal.
Just a guy yelling at people?
Yeah.
You've been there?
Yeah, I've had people I've worked with talk like this. Or scream like this, rather.
I've dealt with this too, yeah. Yeah, everyone's like, Tom Cruise goes crazy. It's like, I've been in this situation many times where someone's not crazy and they're doing this. I've probably been this guy before, to be honest. I'll admit it. I also like, though, he's like saying that we're taking this bolt, like, everyone in Hollywood's counting on us. Like, he's so Tom Cruise about it. Like, he's Ethan Hunt about this. Like, no. Like, this is everything. Us making this movie affects everything in the industry. Like, we have to do this. I hope this just translates to the performance in the movie, though.
Yeah.
Like, this better be
Ethan Hunt.
This better be an intense fucking Mission Impossible movie.
Rated R. Yeah. He has to save Hollywood.
Yeah. He has to save the movie. The fucking terrorists!
All right. Let's hear.
No apologies. You can tell it to the people.
What did he say?
He said no apologies. We'll go back. Hold on. I'll turn it up a little bit for you.
Oh, because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on their table. Pay for their college education. That's what I sleep with every night. The future of the industry. So I'm sorry, I'm beyond your apologies. I have told you, and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out.
I am beyond your apologies. What a line.
Yeah.
I'm beyond your apologies. I like to think
I'm a little underwhelmed.
I like to think that he was just fighting people, like he was yelling this and he was just like, he started attacking them. Well, apparently, this isn't the only time this has happened. I guess he did it again, and several crew members have now quit the movie. This is not the only time this has happened. I guess it's happened a few times now.
I picture him standing on a ladder or some sort of scaffolding.
He's trying to be tall. He's standing on a box. Yeah, because if this just happened once and it was isolated, I'd be like, he blew it. But apparently he's done this several times now. And people are quitting the movie now.
We are not shutting this movie down. Is it understood? If I see it again, you're gone. And so are you. So you're going to cost him his job. If I see it on the set, you're gone. And you're gone. That's it. Am I clear? Do you understand what I want? Do you understand the responsibility that you have? Because I will deal with your reason.
Man, I just like how Tom Cruise is with it. Like the delivery of it and everything.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
it's like a Tom Cruise performance.
it sounds like he's putting on a performance. Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't sound natural. It sounds like he's like delivering it with this like whenever like when he does the Oscar monologue and he's like more than ever. He's like bringing it. He's like gotta bring gravitas to this. He can't just yell at people.
I picture Ving Rhames standing behind him with his arms crossed, just nodding.
Yeah,
Yeah, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's why they're scared. Ving Rhames is there.
I mean, that's all he does in the fucking movies.
Yeah, you talk about like the easiest paycheck supporting character ever. Like in the first Mission Impossible movie, Ving Rhames is in it quite a bit and does some stuff. And me and my dad would always joke about this because we watched all of these movies together. Every single movie, Ving Rhames just shows up like, "Yo, Ethan, that's my man," and he just comes and like gets on a computer. He does something. He like gets on. He like Googles something. And then it's like, if you've been watching this series for like 20-something years, it's just, oh, when's Ving Rhames going to come in? God, he didn't age well. Ving Rhames, like, is a whale. We're a long way from Marcellus Wallace. You know, like that first movie, he still looked like Marcellus Wallace. Now he looks like Marcellus Walrus.
Oh, wow. He's never working again.
Shut that shit down.
You got him, man.
Some guy on the internet called him a walrus. He's done. His career's over.
He does kind of look like a large seal.
Yeah. He looks like he dried up on land and he just works on Mission Impossible movies. Fat fuck, like
God.
he's like the Shaq of like movies, you know, like the more he was successful, the more he ate. And it was hard to watch. No, you know, and he's got like, yeah, he just looks like he doesn't take care of himself at all.
God, you're really shitting on Ving Rhames.
I know. I love
What did
Ving
he ever
Rhames.
do to you?
Yeah.
Oh, who's the bad guy in the new Mission Impossible?
I don't know, because there was that guy.
COVID?
That would be great. It's a virus. I mean, fuck it. They should do it. COVID's the enemy. Tom Cruise is running from COVID. He runs away from it. You know, if he was in the Day After Tomorrow, he would have stayed away from. He would have run away from global warming at Day After Tomorrow. Yeah, there's an action scene where he's like running and people are all getting sick around him and he's jumping over cars and shit, getting away from it. I don't even know what the story is because Fallout was a bit connected to Rogue Nation. It had the bad guy from Rogue Nation. He was still in it. And there's the whole like escape sequence. They do the whole Joker thing. But I don't know if this is like I don't know if the Christopher McQuarrie movies are all supposed to be connected. Because at this point, what the fuck do you do with Ethan Hunt? I mean, I'll say, just seeing these photos here, this is the first time I think Tom Cruise actually looks old as this character. I think his face, he looks pretty old here. Like
I don't know what to do with Ethan Hunt.
Yeah,
I mean,
Fallout was great.
Ethan Hunt?
I mean, it's weird because this franchise is so weird because it's rebooted itself. Like, they had the original 3 movies, and the third one didn't do well, and it seemed like it was over. And then Ghost Protocol comes out, and it's a big hit. And then Rogue Nation's a big hit, and then Fallout's a big hit, and it's like a new trilogy. Yet it has continuity from the original films. And now it's this huge franchise again, like it was the 90s or something. I don't really know what to compare it to except like the Fast and the Furious franchise when Vin Diesel came back and it became new again.
Yeah, I mean,
how often does that happen?
Go to see the weird stunts he's gonna do as well.
Yeah,
like a Jackie Chan movie.
That's exactly what I said when I saw Ghost Protocol. I remember coming out with friends and I was like, that was like a Jackie Chan movie. Like that was like an American Jackie Chan movie.
But I just want them to get more ridiculous as they go. I mean, there was pretty much a fist fight in like 2 helicopters fighting each other.
Yeah.
In the last one.
Well, it's funny because Fallout, for the most part, it's like more of a grounded film for so much of it. Like it's one of the more serious and focused ones since the first one, and it's like a little bit grittier and polished, and there's actually some humanity Ethan Hunt as opposed to some of the other ones. And then that final like 30 minutes when it turns into cliffhanger with helicopters, it's fucking insane. Like Henry Cavill's got this fucking halo gun in the back of a helicopter. And he's just shooting unlimited bullets at Tom Cruise in a helicopter. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, every time I think, what are they going to do with this one? And then they pull out something new. I don't know. Maybe this time he can be flying one of those. Well, I was going to say a fighter jet, but I think he's going to do that in the new Top Gun.
Well, it's weird because the movies repeat themselves too. Like every other movie, there's a motorcycle chase or something that Ethan's done in the other films. But then, like, there's always something new. Like, there's that water sequence in Rogue Nation where he holds his breath for 7 minutes. And then there's that opera sequence that's terrific that people don't talk about enough in Rogue Nation. That I actually think's like the actual standout scene. And then Fallout has the Halo jump and the helicopter stunt. And then it has like a 12-minute long running scene, which is like, I didn't think they would do a longer running scene than the third movie, but they did. I think you just make a movie where he's running for the whole runtime, like 2 hours.
I say fuck it, send him to space.
Yeah.
Jason style.
Yeah, exactly. Like Ethan, you gotta go to space. Ving Rhames is on a computer on the ground and Ethan's up in space. It looks
20-minute sequence of him in 0G fighting
The
Rock. I don't know.
It looks like Gravity.
Can't be reasonable. I can't deal with your logic. You're fired. That's it. That is it. I trust you guys to be here.
I trust you guys to be here.
That's pretty normal. All right, let's finish this up.
It's over. There's more, but
over?
there's more, but I haven't been able to find the full thing. It's longer. I've heard longer versions than that, but I don't know if it's how easy it is to find. That's not like the full audio.
I don't think any of that's notable. I can't believe it's news.
I think the reason it's a big deal is that he always presents himself in public as this very calm, collected, relaxed, happy person, and I don't think anyone's ever heard him like that. I mean, because like the jumping on the couch on Oprah and the Matt Lauer interview and stuff like that, I think that stuff's more interesting. But I don't think
people want to hate Tom Cruise.
It's
true. I
true.
would just like to quote Kanye and say, "Name me one genius that ain't crazy."
I'll even go further and quote the Kanye song, "There'll always be haters, that's the way it is. Hated bitches marry hated," I'm not going to say that word, "and have hated kids." It's true.
Preach. Preach. People want to hate Tom Cruise. I don't know why.
You know, people used to love him too, man. When I was a kid in the 90s, he could do no wrong. I mean, it was a world of Cruise. He cruised through life. You know, everybody, I mean, every movie was big. Everybody loved him. I never heard any shit talk. And then somewhere around 2005, it was like he's terrible. And then he had this career resurgence the last few years, where everybody like digs Edge of Tomorrow and Jack Reacher and that. And then it's like people are just waiting for him to like be terrible. They just want him to be terrible. And I almost think it's like this weird, you know, jealousy thing. Just because he's done it so long.
I don't know. I feel like it's more of like a schadenfreude of this this handsome, you know, powerful, rich man who's also, you can just tell he's eccentric and he hides it. People don't like that.
Yeah, he's trying to hide that he's weird.
Yeah. So every time he lets it slip, even like a smile where he looks insane, people are going to make a big deal out of it.
But if that's what Mr. Cruz has brought to this world,
and because Scientologist does, he or she has the ability to.
I feel like I'm gonna get a copyright claim with that goddamn. Why would you put the music in that? Cut the goddamn music out. Tom Cruise very pissed.
How pissed? I don't see anything strange about. I mean, yeah, sounds like he was being a dick. You're under a lot of pressure. You're putting your own money up. I don't know the context of that situation.
I like the charisma on command here, the dangerous side of Tom Cruise's charisma. You know, this is why one of my favorite Tom Cruise performances, and he doesn't do it enough, is Vincent in Collateral. He's so... Because there's a lot of Ethan Hunt in that performance. It's that calculated focus thing. But he's so fucking crazy. Like, you could see the craziness behind the eyes in that movie. I actually think that's just, like, easily one of his best acting performances. Because nobody's ever used him that way.
Yeah, I would say most people would agree with that.
Because a lot of the times it's a Tom Cruise performance. Like, you watch a lot of his movies and he's doing Tom Cruise. And it's great and you like it. Because he doesn't really do the... Unfortunately, he really doesn't do the Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire, you know, the Firm type movies anymore. He doesn't do the Rain Mans and all that stuff. He quit doing those movies a long time ago. Like, he just doesn't do dramas anymore. He doesn't do, like, adult movie. He just does action movies or, like...
Like Nicolas Cage, he does some of the best freakouts you will ever see.
But I think that's been a detriment to his career as much as he's become like this new action god. I think if he would occasionally do a movie that was like those older films, because those are the ones I really love. I mean, I love the action stuff, but the ones I really love are like, you know, Color of Money and Rain Man and stuff. That's the stuff where I love Tom Cruise more than I love
Risky
anyone.
Business.
Yeah. And he just doesn't do those kinds of roles. You know, he's not in a David Fincher movie. You know, and I think he would be good in those kinds of movies.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd be in it. Yeah, and he just doesn't do them anymore.
He's fantastic in that.
I don't know when he made that decision to not do those kinds of roles anymore. Or he just wanted to get the action stuff out of the way while he was still able to do it. But, you know, the guy's pushing 60. So I just don't know how much time he has left, but it's... I guess the curious thing to me is, like, what was that, like, switch? Because, you know, he had to freak out during that period where his career was, like, on a downward spiral, and the movies weren't making as much money, and the public turned on him. Because he wasn't used to that. Pretty much since Top Gun, he was, like, the biggest movie star in the world. For a long time. Like, 15 years. And then it all ended, and now he's big again, and, like, people seem to like him again. But I don't... I think definitely it's the stress of the movie, but I think that there's also sort of this... I think he holds a lot in, and that's kind of coming out, too. Because apparently this has happened a few times on the set. That's the only reason it's interesting, because it was once, but I've heard this has happened several times now where he's blown up on the cast and crew on this movie. So it's been a repeated thing. So he's having some kind of issue. And I don't know if they're just telling him, like, hey, if you guys don't follow these protocols, your movie gets shut down. Because he's a producer of all of these movies.
Yeah.
So I'm worried about the quality of the
He's
movie, to be honest.
His own films for quite some time.
Well, I think Mission Impossible was the first big one where he stepped in as a producer. The first one back in '96. I believe. I don't think before that he produced anything.
He produced.
And then I think after that he started. I think because that was the big thing, was that he produced and he wasn't really an action star to people before he did that first Mission Impossible, because at that time he was like, it was The Firm and it was like those kinds of movies is what he was in. A Few Good Men. It's like a serious actor, you know. Then he was Ethan Hunt.
But then he was Jerry Maguire.
It's true. People don't bring that up enough. That Jerry Maguire Mission Impossible, same year. Same fucking year. He does the Oscar movie and then like the big box office movie.
I mean, he does Eyes Wide Shut and Magnolia in the same year too.
Yeah, I know.
So what is it? Where's the turning point in his career? Is it after Minority Report? Is it after War of the Worlds?
I think War of the Worlds, the relationship with Spielberg and what happened there, I definitely think that had some impact on everything. Because we've read that thing, me and you have read that transcript. Because he's never worked.
The notorious.
Because
notorious Spielberg transcript.
Because he hasn't worked with Steven Spielberg since War of the Worlds. So they work on Minority Report. It's a huge hit, very critically acclaimed. They do War of the Worlds, not as acclaimed, but makes a lot of money. Biggest director, biggest actor, seems like it makes sense. Spielberg still works with like Tom Hanks, doesn't work with Tom Cruise because apparently it's over Kate Capshaw and Tom Cruise going at each other. Because Cruise and Capshaw didn't like Cruise, and Cruise kept confronting her, and then this caused a rift between him and Steven Spielberg. Because this is one of those Hollywood things, but there has to be some validity to it because they used to be friends and they used to do things together, and they don't work together anymore, and they're not at anything with each other anymore. So something happened.
Well, I mean, it's not like he's working with Richard Dreyfuss. I don't know if anything happened there.
Yeah, but they're still friends and stuff.
Are they? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean,
When you go golfing with them?
To be fair, does anyone work with Richard Dreyfuss?
Fair point.
I mean, if we're talking about careers that went south, I don't know what the fuck. Richard Dreyfuss, like, in some of the biggest movies of the 70s, then he has this, like, comeback with, like, Stakeout, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, does What About Bob, and then it all culminates in Mr. Holland's Opus, where he gets his Oscar nomination, and it's, like, this big movie. And then after that, with, like, the Gryffindor's Tribe, and... yeah, it is weird Richard Dreyfuss isn't in more movies. What the fuck happened?
I want to hear Richard Dreyfuss's freak out. He would have given a better performance.
Yeah, because doesn't it feel like Richard Dreyfuss should, like, in the last 20 years, should have been in, like, a bunch of big movies?
Yeah, or at least, like, the Dustin Hoffman level. Yeah. Where's the Dreyfuss?
Yeah, what... The Lord of the Rings guest then and now. There's this picture of a fat Liv Tyler.
What?
Look at, can you see it on the screen there? What is that? Like they just show this big fat picture of like Liv Tyler Photoshop big star.
You're talking gibberish here.
I'm sorry. God, we're like these assholes. They're these reaction guys. Tom Cruise goes ballistic on Mission Impossible 7 crew and leaked audio reaction, and they're making faces. That's every reaction thumbnail ever.
Yeah. My reaction to it is, I don't care.
All right, let's watch some more Tom Cruise. This is a famous one.
Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? Come here. Hey, why would you do that? Why would you do that? No, it's okay. No, wait a second. What's so funny about that? It's ridiculous. Do you like making lessons? Is that you like nice doing mean things? That's really. Hey, no, don't run away. Don't run away. No, I don't care. That's incredibly rude.
Man, he is such an alpha here.
He does have a kind of Patrick Bateman quality.
Oh, he would have been a brilliant if he had been young enough when they made that. I mean, he is Patrick Bateman. I mean, when
Yeah.
I watched Jerry Maguire, I mean, Bret Easton Ellis has said, I mean, if he could have played Patrick Bateman, I think it would be like his best performance.
I don't know.
Dude, the thing with Tom Cruise running naked with a chainsaw, covered in blood, chasing a girl down a hallway. That's not the best thing you've ever seen?
I feel like it would just lack subtlety. I feel like that's too on the nose for Cruise. Too easy. Too in his wheelhouse, obviously.
He's too comfortable with this chainsaw nudity.
Yeah.
I would like to see him do the Huey Lewis monologue. No, just how he grabs the guy. Why would you do that? Do you think that's funny? That's incredibly rude. No, and he's a small man. But like here, he's like
How tall is he?
he's like 5'6". He's not a big
Yeah,
guy.
I mean, that's kind of short. Yeah.
I'm here giving you an interview and answering your questions, and you do something really nasty. You're a jerk.
You're a jerk. Underrated, calling someone a jerk.
You're a jerk.
It's so funny. Every time, if anyone called me a jerk, I would just be so happy. You're a real jerk. No, because people are so crass nowadays. People say like asshole or fuck you and all that stuff. But like, what happened to the good old ones? Like, you're a jerk. I feel like it stings
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Instead of just saying, like, because if someone calls you an asshole or like fuck you or all that, like that stuff's lost so much meaning. I feel
All the
like
stuff that we just listened to Tom Cruise say.
yeah, yeah. But if he looked at everyone in the cast of crew, he's like, you guys are all jerks. You're real jerks, okay?
Well, the way you say it makes it sound very whiny. You guys are all jerks.
These guys are all being jerks, okay? Not wearing your mask on the set and everything. I'm gonna get in trouble. People are gonna lose their jobs over this. Their college education.
What
Okay.
if he was yelling at people who had COVID, weren't wearing their masks, showed up to work and were coughing on children? Would we be having this discussion?
Okay, hold on. Let me try to. Okay, the intensity. You're a jerk.
You're a jerk.
Yeah, it's great. I'm gonna start using that more because I used to use it comedically, like saying jerk, because I think it's funny.
Yeah.
But him saying it, I'm like, huh? You're a jerk.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's like once you hear Kathy Bates say certain things in Misery,
Yeah,
it just sticks with you.
I'm gonna find her, and I'm gonna hurt her. You're a real jerk. You know that? He just says that to Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm gonna count to 10, and when I get to
I'm
10,
going to get COVID,
yeah,
and I'm not going to wear my mask.
yeah.
I'm going to find her, and I'm going to infect her.
Yeah. You have a wife, girl.
I don't
you
know
like.
who she is, but she's not wearing a mask.
Dude, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3. What the fuck?
So underrated.
Where did J.J. Abrams pull that out of his ass?
It's so good. I don't believe he came up with it.
I mean,
Someone must have given it to
because
him.
it's a series that really lacks good villains. I mean, it's an issue with the whole series is nobody can ever really match Tom Cruise. Like they've never really cast they rarely cast like because John Voight in the first one they never really like kissed an actor that. I mean, I guess Henry Cavill sort of had it, but you really want someone who can
No, he
go.
didn't.
I don't think he
Not
did.
even
I
close.
think Cruise overshadows him. Yeah, because like if they would actually cast a big name actor to go toe to toe with Cruise in one of these movies, like somebody you're like, holy shit, it's Cruise versus that guy, and they never do.
I disagree. I don't think it needs to be a big name actor. I think it just needs to be someone with some goddamn screen presence, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, or like.
Because if you notice
Picture him up again.
that whole series, that's like such an issue. Is you never feel like the villain's gonna fuck Ethan over because they all feel like inconsequential to what's happening. It's always about him and his friends and these situations he gets in and all the henchmen that he takes out. But I can't. That's the only one where there's a guy where you're like, oh man, like this dude's gonna start. I mean, that opening scene, Cruise is doing the Cruise cry, like that's intense. Philip Seymour Hoffman in that movie, it's like he's not fucking around.
Yeah, and he also presents the kind of Lex Luthor brains versus the brawn of Ethan Hunt and his team.
Is this the best scene J.J. Abrams has ever directed?
I don't know.
I mean, there's a couple scenes in Super 8, but is this the best movie scene in a J.J. Abrams film? Because this feels better than other J.J. Abrams films, this stuff. Because mostly...
I don't know. The video isn't loading.
Oh, no, I'm just saying
So,
before we go
I'll
into it.
disagree with you and say it is.
We've talked about this. This film aesthetically influenced every blockbuster that followed it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Every 2000s film looks like this after this came out. That just like washed out. Great. I mean, I think Minority Report has a lot of that too, though. Before this, but I think like this had a bigger
you've
impact.
Got a little bit of that Paul Greengrass camera work.
Mm-hmm. Born Supremacy was a big influence too on movies, I think.
Yeah, it's like J.J. Abrams' mediocrity was a thumb over every other movie, just smudging everything.
Whoever wrote the scene, though, good job. Good idea for a scene. Oh my god. There's no makeup on that face. Jesus Christ.
I have no idea what you're watching.
Do you not see it?
No, I don't see anything.
Hold on. You don't... Oh, hold on. Do you see it now?
No, I don't.
What the hell happened? You were seeing the things before, right?
Yeah.
The fuck?
We'll have to cut this part out.
It's okay, we'll figure it out. Complications. I just don't know why you can't see it. Hold on. I could fix this. Or maybe I can't. Maybe I just suck.
Maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, kiddly divey too, wouldn't you?
Well, because we're on a streaming channel together, so you should be able to see the screen share.
If the words sound queer, funny to your ear.
Well, how technology's come so far, and yet it
jumbled
hasn't come far at all.
We need to start being nicer to computers.
Okay, one sec. Okay, do you see it now?
I see. Yeah,
Okay.
I see it now.
Okay, cool. Fixed it.
You're dead, Mr. David. There are witnesses.
I was you in the bathroom.
And you're going to tell us everything. Every buyer you've worked with, every organization.
What the hell is your name?
Names, contacts, inventory lists.
You have a wife, girlfriend?
It's up to you how this goes.
Because you know what I'm going to do next? I'm going to find her. Whoever she is, I'm going to find her and I'm going to hurt her.
You were apprehended carrying details of the location, something codenamed the Rabbit's Foot.
I'm going to make her bleed and cry and call out your name. And you're not going to be able to do shit. You know why?
What is a Rabbit's Foot?
Man, the way this is framed, this is so close up. And it's shaking. These shots are disgusting. Like,
yeah, I mean,
they're just
they really capture this kind of subtle menace that Hoffman brings.
Well, it's almost like because I think about the like interrogation scene with the Joker, and it's kind of got this like lighting, but like if they could have just because it's like you want more scenes like this in the Mission Impossible movies. There's never enough of these dialogue exchanges like this, these intense confrontations. Like I would want so much more of this in this series because the first movie actually has quite a few of them.
Exactly, the first movie has these crazy intense De Palma scenes.
And I think it should be a staple of the franchise, but it's not.
No. After that, it's a bit lacking as far as dialogue goes.
Yeah, they're just like nonstop action and exposition for the most part. It's not like a spy thriller where someone's sitting at a table with someone and there's like, because like this, like yeah, he's trying to fuck with him a little bit. What I like is like Ethan's a character that doesn't really let like what's going on. He doesn't let things get to him. He keeps his cool a lot of the time and just kind of, he's like a character with agency. He deals with things, but this is fucking with him.
It's like a John le Carré interrogation scene where the interrogation so often fails.
Yeah, because Cruz is just trying to stay to the point, just being like, "Hey, man, you're gonna tell us this all about this all." It's like, no, I'm gonna find her. I'm gonna fuck her. I'm gonna fuck her hard.
Yeah, we play another clip of Tom Cruise, and he's saying, "I'm gonna find that mask.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it on her.
I want to find her. I'm gonna find her mask. I'm gonna take it off. She's gonna get
I'm gonna
sick.
quarantine you."
You'll be this close to dead.
Spire.
And then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her.
And then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her. Man, Hoffman just turning it up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Spire. And then I'm gonna kill you right in front of her.
this is such a key thing that not enough movies do. You cast like a guy who's been in, Philip Serapo is a movie star, but you get like this guy who like is an Oscar-winning actor, can do the shit. Like you think about the crazy shit he does in something like Punch Drunk Love, or something weird like Happiness, and you make this guy a villain in a blockbuster like this. Not enough movies do this. You just get that quirky character actor, because they're more menacing.
Very true.
There's so much more.
It's like Cillian Murphy. So much more could have been done with him.
Yeah, it's some of the best stuff in that entire Nolan trilogy is that Batman Begins Scarecrow stuff. Just the few scenes you get with it, and it's not enough, because Ra's al Ghul takes over the movie. But there's the scene where he first put the mask on when they're in the mental hospital with him and Falcone, and that shit's like great. And even Anthony Hopkins, that's what that was. You take this, I mean, he had been in some weird movies, but you take this guy's like in Howard's End, and you make him Hannibal Lecter. And it's part of the reason it works.
That kind of bold choice.
Yeah, Heath Ledger, that was a swing from Nolan. He wasn't anyone's pick to be the Joker. And those are the things that works. And people, I just think, because we do have a lack of like great villains in modern movies, and the villain's always more entertaining than the hero a lot of the time. It's not always true, but like what I think about what's been a detriment to a lot of movies, action films in modern day and stuff is like, yeah, just menacing, someone that scares you. Where you're like, oh, he's got to overcome this. Because if there's nothing for them to overcome, then what's the struggle? They're kind of just going through the motions. Like it, because there used to be. I felt like they put as much thought into like who was going to be the bad guy in this thing as with the good guy. But I don't know if they do that anymore. Like a lot of the Marvel movies, it's always like that's the big complaint. The villains suck a lot of the time. It's all about like who's playing the hero.
Well, you largely have two types of villains. You have the tyrant villain, and you have the nemesis villain. And if you have the tyrant villain, they should have a decent motivation. I think a popular one would be, big purple guy from Avengers. What was his name?
Oh, Thanos.
Oh yeah, Thanos. That's it. Bear with me. The nemesis villain, though, needs to have that kind of charisma. He has no broader vision. He's just the nemesis, out to get the hero because of revenge or some perceived slight.
Let me ask you this. Who's your favorite villain in a movie? It seems like an easy question, but I don't think it is.
Man.
Because I don't mean villain as if the lead character like Alex is an anti-hero or villain in Clockwork. I mean like there's a good guy and then there's the bad guy.
Okay. I mean,
I
I
mean
kind of.
I mean it that way, not like Freddy Krueger sort of thing, you know. Well, let's eliminate who's your favorite. Who do you think's the most effective villain you've ever seen in a movie? We'll eliminate favorite because that's whatever. But who do you think you're like, fuck? Because I have a couple in my head that I think are really effective. And every time I watch the movie, I'm like, that's part of the reason this works.
So, some that come to mind as far as the most effective are Out of the Past, Kirk Douglas in that. It's an old film noir
Yeah.
and one of the best. And Kirk Douglas is, well, they're essentially vying for the same girl at the end. And he just seems so human, so real, and so much smarter than Robert Mitchum, so much more competent than Robert Mitchum in that. That you know it's not gonna, well. And he also is really human. They both want to get their hands on the femme fatale.
Out of all the villains I've seen in movies, he was the most human.
Ray Fiennes as Amon Gut in
Oh,
Schindler's List.
God, that's pretty top tier. It's weird though, because I like him so much.
Yeah,
I'll say this. It's fucked up. I shouldn't say it, but I will. When he gets hung at the end of that movie and all that, it upsets me.
yeah.
I like that guy.
Spielberg makes you sympathize with the Nazi, but I mean, he's fantastic. Great performance, great dialogue. He owns every scene he's in, and
Well, you know, I think a key thing in that is when Oscar says that, you know, war always brings out the worst in people, not the good, and if this wasn't this war and he wasn't a Nazi, that guy probably wouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. And that's very interesting. Because it's
the sequence where they're both trying to fool each other into thinking that the other one is on their side, trying to convince themselves that the other one is a good person.
well, and also just that he never really does anything. There is something to be said in that movie that he never really does anything. From what I remember, I've seen it a few times, but that he never really does anything to fuck over Oscar. That friendship kind of lasts for him throughout the movie. Like he fights with himself internally with how he feels about the Jews and what he wants to do and not do, but like he never actually, he's like loyal to that friendship for the most part. Even though at the end, you know, it takes money to get for Oscar to get what he wants, but he does, you know, because even that point, the humanities when he's like, "Oh, the party's over."
Yeah, Oscar Schindler has to placate him the entire time. So,
you know, we did forget.
We see as the viewers,
Yeah.
Oscar Schindler does not how horrible he is. I mean, he does kill people indiscriminately. And of course, we're talking about the character, not the actual person, Amon Gut.
Obviously, yes. Well, because it's not like whenever I watch it, I never feel like he's completely on board with the whole Nazi thing or the belief in it. Like I think any of the things he does, like the sniping or like how he acts, I think that's just like a behavioral thing. Like he clearly has a screw loose somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the Nazis locked him up for being crazy.
Yeah, he's just a crazy guy. I don't necessarily know if he even like believes in, you know, the teachings or anything like that. I'm not sure how much he's into that or he just likes. I think it's a movie about characters who are opportunistic. and Germans being
Yeah.
opportunistic. And I think him and Oscar are both finding a situation with opportunity where they can do what they want and make some money out of this. And the difference is that Oscar changes and sees the wrongs of this way. And it feels like he's gonna change maybe because of Helen. But then ultimately because he's crazy, he's thinking like he's just gonna shoot himself and her. Like it's a crazy like he can't like cross that line because he's a wacko.
He's too far gone.
But that makes you sympathize with him too.
Yeah. No, Spielberg makes you sympathize with a horrible Nazi war criminal by making him human and giving Ray Fiennes gives him a great performance. If you need a good villain, go to Ray Fiennes. Go to old Voldemort.
So one for me is Gene Hackman in Unforgiven.
Oh yeah.
When he's with Morgan Freeman in that scene, and he's like, "I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you lie and you don't answer them right, I'm going to hurt you." And when he's saying
Classic
that shit,
tyrant villain,
yeah, and the fact that
where he thinks he's the hero of his own story.
yes, that's the brilliant thing about that movie is that like, yeah, William is like Clint Eastwood's character. This guy's killed people, he's killed women and children, he's horrible. But yeah, this other guy thinks he's this hero. He's going to ban guns.
I didn't deserve this. I'm building my own house.
But
and he's recounting the truth.
Yes.
To Saul Rubenstein about all of these asshole cowboys who live in this kind of fake glory.
Yeah, he thinks he's like this hero character. Yeah, and I really like that. That ultimately becomes his downfall too, because he just doesn't know the evil that's coming, the hell that's coming to him. He just goes too far.
What he's brought upon himself. Yeah.
Yeah, if he didn't push it that far, he would probably come out okay. But he just goes too far. You know, he kills the magical black friend, and you know you can't do that.
He kills Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, you can't you can't do that. Yeah, I really
that's an excellent choice.
Well, because most movies would have the main character guy, the cowboy guy, or the other guy be like either a good guy, like, or he would do bad things, but he ultimately has a heart of gold. Like a lot of movies would have the Clint Eastwood character ultimately be a good guy who's just done some bad things, but he's not a good guy. And it would have the Gene Hackman character be this just evil, over the top villain character. But that movie has so much nuance with it that Clint Eastwood's really the guy you should hate, who should be like the piece of shit. And Gene Hackman's character should be justified, but you want him to go into that bar at the end and blow them all away.
Yeah,
you want that violence that's been set up the whole movie, that you're like waiting for that payoff, and it's like it's being teased for most of it.
Well, and also he's going through this hero's journey, right? He's going through this redemptive journey, and also as a true kind of fictional hero in the Joseph Campbell sense, he has no vision for humanity. He is just doing what he's there to do. And on the other hand, you have this very opinionated sheriff who has a definite vision for the town and wants to control it, even if it's not for any sort of evil ends. He has a vision of what he wants.
Yeah, and it's just, it's just really interesting because there's no like clear cut good guys and bad guys in that movie, and it's even about the myths of good guys and bad guys, you know, and how we perceive them, and so every time I watch that movie, I really like, I mean, because Hackman's really bringing it, but it's also, you think about it, he didn't play a lot of bad guys, actually. Like in his career, like a lot of the times he's either, he might be sort of an anti-hero character, but a lot of his famous roles, he's not a bad guy. So it's pretty like, I like seeing him that way, and it makes me think like, I wish he'd played more bad guys. He's like a real son of a bitch, you know?
I was just thinking, you know what my favorite villain is? You know who it is?
Obviously Darth Vader.
Wow, how'd you guess?
I don't
My
know.
favorite villain, I've got to say, Iago from Othello.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I
Yeah.
don't think that's very fair to bring up. Um, I will bring up the film. I think the American film equivalent of Shakespeare, which is The Sweet Smell of Success by
Oh,
Ernest Lehman and Clifford Odets.
J.J. Hunt. Yeah.
J.J. Hunsaker. You're dead, son. Get yourself buried. I mean, he's terrifying.
I know
It opens with
I
pictures of
know.
him staring at you, and you even feel for Tony Curtis's character, Sidney Falco, who's just roaming the streets, this dirty little rat of a person, this unscrupulous, horrible, horrible little man, and yet you still fear Hunsaker.
Yeah, no, and he's got this like universal monster sort of
Yeah,
thing at points, like
I
he's
mean,
a Frankenstein or something. Like he's a monster. He really is. Like he's like, but he's a monster with words and presence. No, he looks like Giant in that movie too, and just the way it's framed. It's such a like dead face. It's weird because some of those performances from those decades, like even though I love them, some of them have aged, and that those two performances haven't aged.
you mean that? I mean, yeah, they've aged well.
Yeah, they hold up. Like they don't feel like old school acting versus more modernist naturalist acting. It doesn't have that like I still think those like it's like whenever I watch it because that's like easily one of like the just very best movies ever made. But yeah, their performances are just not. It's so weird how they haven't like a because that's the thing when I watched it because I think a lot of the performances around them in that movie have aged. You know, I think like the way his sister is played and the guy she's dating who's in the jazz band and all that stuff. That feels like
Yeah, it's like something out of a film noir from the
yeah.
50s.
But yeah, what they're
Uh,
what they're doing is like, oh, this is still like high class stuff that would
but
work in a movie day.
Hunsaker, as a villain, he's terrifying, but he's really just this kind of eagle up on his perch, you know? Or if you want to mix some more metaphors, a spider pulling all these strings. He doesn't really do anything. He just has people do bad things, and he's entirely realistic in that. When he says something, even if it's hysterical, it's terrifying.
So I have another one because I just watched it. The Warden in the Shawshank Redemption. There's that
Oh
scene
yeah,
where he has Tim Robbins in solitary confinement, and he comes up to him and he's just like, because he's so offended that he gets called obtuse. It like pisses him off, and
yeah.
and he's it's the best use of obtuse in a movie ever. And he's so pissed off about it. But there's that scene where he tells him that he's like, I mean, he really goes for it. He's like, we're going to have us a good old book burning. We can dance as they burn up in the flames and all that. And he's like, am I being obtuse now? And it's like, Jesus Christ, this guy is so evil. I forgot. I always forget about that scene. And then when it happens, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, you hate that dude.
Yeah, it is kind of ridiculous
No, it's
though when he
insane.
lets out something and he sounds like it's out of Milton.
No, he says that line or something like about the Bible. And then he's like, your ass is mine. Your ass is mine. No, because that actor, he didn't do like he's kind of like a, you know, that
Character
guy.
actor.
Yeah, but in that, it's like holy shit, dude, fuck. No, he said yeah, because early on he doesn't totally feel like a crazy over the, like Clancy Brown's getting a lot of the villain stuff of that movie. He's just beating the shit out of people. He's just killing
Mhm.
people. And then the warden when he comes to the second half, but I was watching it again recently, and I'm like, oh my, I mean, I think almost you need that because just the humanity and them getting out of Shawshank, the ending and all that. I don't know if it works if there's not like this great evil that they have to overcome, because otherwise it's just like, well, yeah, they're in prison. Okay. But it's like, oh, they're having a really rough time in prison. But yeah, there's that scene. It is insane. It's so over the top where he just goes on that whole rant about how they're going to burn books. and
Yeah.
he's gonna put him down with the sodomites. I'll cast you with the sodomites.
Yeah. It reminds me of
It's
a more
crazy.
like a ridiculous version of like the Judge from Blood Meridian, who's just one of the most terrifying villains.
If there's no creature that's on this map that I don't know about, it's living without my consent or something like that. He
Yeah.
says it's like the most fucked up line I've ever heard. It's doing so without my consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
I mean,
I was shocked how over the top
he
because
plays the fiddle and dances an evil jig. And it's somehow
I know.
still terrified, as ridiculous as it is.
I know.
And I hope no one ever makes that wonderful book into a movie.
They've tried. James Franco tried for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, God help us if they let him.
The great auteur James Franco.
Yeah, yeah. We saw what he did with Faulkner.
I mean, I think I would like to see a movie that's like Blood Meridian that isn't Blood Meridian. I would like to see a movie like that. I'll say that. Like, I would like to see a character like that in some kind of Western. Because I feel like we haven't got the truly great modern day Western movie. I feel like there's such a chance to make like a perfect Western today that's got a great villain in it like that. I really feel like just somebody like hasn't pulled the trigger on that yet. And there's been some Westerns that have made money the last few years. Last, decade, True Grit did really well, Django, but like I feel like everything post Unforgiven, I mean there's been some decent ones, but I really haven't loved a Western since Unforgiven in the same way. Like I like Tombstone quite a bit. Nick, I think it came out the year after, but although I kind of think Unforgiven's like the best Western ever, but uh, I I see that movie and just how intense it is and how rich the dialogue is and how great the characters are and the acting is, and I'm like, why the fuck aren't there more Westerns like this? Like, it's almost like I feel like Clint Eastwood laid down the map, like, hey, you can make Westerns like this, and then people didn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard to top Unforgiven. I'll say that.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't think. I mean, there's westerns that I probably like as much as a movie, but I don't. I've never seen one. I don't think there's another one that has dialogue that good. I think David Peebles' script is just brilliant. And I know some people are like, "Oh, Lonesome Dove" or this and that, and I'm like, I mean, yeah, I like all those, but man,
I love Lonesome Dove, Rio Bravo, The
yeah,
Searchers.
me too.
I love westerns, but as a modern western, it's hard to top.
Well, it kind of like lifts it to
Unforgiven.
this level of like high art that even like lifts it above like genre conventions of westerns because it plays with the conventions, and Clint Eastwood's so knowledgeable of them too. And he's never really made a movie that good again either. For being honest, like he's made some movies
Yeah.
I like, but he's never made another Unforgiven. Hell of a thing to
That's
kill
true.
a man. Take away everything he has, everything he's ever gonna have.
Very quotable.
I mean, yeah, it's just filled with these fucking great fucking lines. I mean, I guess if you like, I guess there's shit like Deadwood or like Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, I wouldn't say those are even in the same league.
I think as a video game, Red Dead Redemption's in the league. Like as far as like a
Red Redemption.
Red Redemption, like is what Unforgiven as a movie. I think Red Dead Redemption's pretty great as a game, a video
we're
game.
leaving the Christmas season. Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter? No, you're nothing but a skeevely, scary little spider. Grand scheme of things. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't hate Mr. Potter?
He's just a fucking asshole.
He gets away with the crime at the end. I know people who hate that movie because he isn't punished at the end.
Yeah, he doesn't get the punishment. I know.
He still has the $8,000.
I know. He's still alive today somewhere with it.
I mean, that motherfucker. He just has to fuck over George Bailey. And Lionel Barrymore is amazing.
Well, that's the thing. How do you? Because the over the top villain, where they just make them so hateful. That it's not even like he's a, we're talking about Ray Fiennes of these complex villains. Then there's the villain that's just a fucking evil piece of shit.
Yeah, I mean,
Who's just an evil. He's a jerk.
all he is a
He's a
slumlord.
He's a real
but
jerk.
He's like Biff.
You
Biff's a real jerk.
You know what, Mr. Potter? You're a real
Although
jerk.
Biff is worse than Mr. Potter. Biff is like a fucking rapist.
Yeah, that's the weirdest scene in Back to the Future. That Biff tries to
when you
rape
think
Marty's
about it,
mom.
I think
I don't know how that's
I think
aged.
it's a chilling. I think it's aged well. It's a chilling reminder of how a few generations ago how normal that was.
It's just, I've seen Back to the Future a lot, and it's just the movie doesn't have anything like that in it up until that point. Like, it's pretty.
That's why it's so dark at that moment.
No, it is dark. Like, when she is in the car and he's on her, and she's like, "George, help me!" It's like, and he's like, "Walk away, McFly," and you're like, "Jesus Christ, what the fuck?" It'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Marty inadvertently going back in time almost got his mother raped.
Yeah.
You have to think about this.
And then they keep him around afterwards. That's the thing.
Yeah, why
weird.
is Biff working at the house after he attempted to rape the mother in the 50s? He's around.
Maybe they keep him as like some indentured servant just to belittle him. I don't know.
No, you have a known rapist, attempted rapist, at your house with your family. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how Zemeckis. I mean, George McFly was a very forgiving man, but I don't. Yeah, because it's so dark. I mean, it really takes a dark turn with that moment, and I dig it too. But it's also like, I didn't even think about that till I just said it. That like that didn't, as far as I know, that didn't happen in the original timeline until Marty went back to the 50s. So if George would have been knocked out or not been able to save, Marty's mom would have been raped, and it would have been Marty's fault. Then Marty would have disappeared, and she would have had this like Biff child who's just a piece of shit in the 80s.
I pictured him instantly looking like the Eraserhead kid.
No, because it'd be like,
oh God, it's horrible.
Hey Doc, my mom got raped. This is
And then,
heavy.
his like ancestors and him in the future they're murderers. You can't help but killing people. You can't help to kill people. Yeah, wow, Biff's a real piece of shit. You really hate him too.
Yeah, no, in the future he's just gonna kill Marty.
When he's killed Marty's dad.
Yeah, no, it's like
his ancestor
I know.
is just a murderer who's gonna kill Doc Brown.
I know, he comes from a bad bloodline. It's not really his fault.
Yeah.
It's genetic.
Makes a good case for eugenics, I guess.
I've heard nothing but good cases for eugenics. But the rape scene is fucking like, it's so, I mean, because it's what makes the punch. It's what makes the punch so powerful. Because that's a really, I mean, pretty much that last like 25 minutes, like Robert Zemeckis can't make a false note. It's just like masterclass, like everything with the music and like the weird, like the way that Biff's laughing and he's like when he's holding Crispin Glover and then Crispin Glover making that fist, and then the way Michael J. Fox runs into the scene afterwards, which then leads into like the dance sequence and the guitar and then Marty fading and then looking at I mean, all that stuff is so well timed. It like hits so well, and then you get the fucking amazing final set piece on the stretch of road with the clock tower and Doc Brown and Marty going back. I mean, that stuff's like unassailable.
Yeah.
It's just so good. It's just like because I remember seeing it in the theater. I sound like I saw it in the 80s, but I saw it on the theater like 10 years ago. And I'd seen the movie a lot, and it's sold out. The audience was sold out, and it was so weird because sometimes when you go see an old movie that you've seen a lot in the theater, it feels like you're seeing it for the first time. It's this weird thing I can't explain. It doesn't always happen.
Oh yeah, very true.
But I've had it where you'll go sit in the theater and you feel like you're watching the movie in the time it came out, and it's a strange experience that can only really happen with like older films like that, where you're like, this feels like, because then you realize how good movies used to be as opposed to they are now. Because when you see a really good movie in the theater and you get to see it on a big screen like that and see the cinematography, you're like, oh wow, Back to the Future is so much better than any movie I've seen in the last 10 years. And it was so crazy, like when the lightning hits and he goes back in time, the whole theater just like erupted. Like there was this energy and everybody was laughing.
Lightning struck the theater.
Yeah, and everybody was laughing really loud at all the jokes, and I felt like I was seeing it at 85, and I was like, fuck, this is how people felt when this movie came out. It was a crazy experience. And every time I've watched the movie since, it's like been a bit lesser of that, but I've also come to love the movie. It's sort of weird, like every time I take a time movie, it's like I like it more each time I watch it. Because I get to that final like 20, 25 minutes, and I'm just kind of in awe of it, how well executed everything is.
You want to know another villain I really hate?
Yeah, who do you hate?
David Gale's character, Dr. Hill in Reanimator.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about another fucking rapist.
I know.
But, you know, he's just such a prick. And I mean, the guy has, you know, her father lobotomized.
I know.
And, you know, he's a minor character in a short movie, but he's just so evil.
I know.
He's just so evil. It's kind of like
he's just a real jerk.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a real creep.
Yeah,
is what
he is. He is a creep.
And you know, he's reanimated. He's a plagiarist too. Plagiarism, rape, kidnapping.
Yeah, all of the above.
And of course, speaking of lobotomizing, Nurse Ratched, I think what
you know,
needs to be said about Nurse Ratched.
You know, my friends had a debate about that recently on social media, and it was an interesting debate because I've often struggled with it. Because I've had this... Because I know you and me, we both really like the movie Cuckoo's Nest. But...
Love it.
I have a lot of friends who don't like the movie, and they like the book, and they specifically don't like the casting of Jack Nicholson. Now, this isn't a criticism of the performance, but Casey didn't want Nicholson as the role. He wanted Gene Hackman. And the reason for that is because he believes, and a lot of my friends who don't like this, they believe that the character shouldn't be charismatic and likable because he's ultimately in the wrong and Nurse Ratched isn't. And they think an inherent flaw with the movie is that Jack Nicholson is too charismatic and likable that you end up loving him. And so you don't see any of his faults, which are more prominent in the book. Where Gene Hackman, you could have really been that kind of piece of shit. But Jack Nicholson, he's just like oozing charisma in every scene in that goddamn movie. Where, so Ratchet's kind of like this hated villain because he's set up that way. But a lot of people think, at least this has been the discussion I've heard around people who don't like the movie, is that... Because I've had this argument with people where they're like, I'm like, what about Brad Dourif and all that? And they're like, yeah, that's all great, but it doesn't work because, like, he shouldn't be that likable and she shouldn't seem that evil. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I think you're thinking about the book. You're not seeing it as a movie, you know, like it's different. But I think it's an interesting discussion to have because Gene Hackman playing it, I do think would have been different from how Jack Nicholson plays it. Because Jack Nicholson is so goddamn likable. That stuff that I think maybe the scenes how they're written, like when he punches out the glass and gets the cigarettes, or when he takes all the guys out on the boat and everything. It feels like these like heroic, awesome moments. And I think some people think that those moments aren't supposed to feel that way. You're supposed to feel like this guy's being really irresponsible and putting people in danger.
Yeah, I mean, he is a criminal.
And I think it's an interesting point of view because I never really thought about it that way. But I know
it's an interesting take on that movie. I would say in response to it, the book is a fine book. You know, it's because
that's not like a shallow observation, you know.
Yeah, it and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Sometimes a Great Notion are both all right books. But the movie of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest really transcends the book.
I feel the same way. I feel like that snobbery book shit when people say that to me, and I get really upset.
I mean,
it's like
I do it all the time, and I understand that they can't see the movie because of having read the book first, they just can't do it. I understand that, but I've read the book. I think the book is fine.
I have too. I said that once to two
but
friends of
the
mine, and they
movie-
looked at me with the most disgust I've ever had two people look at me, where they were like, yeah, I don't really like the movie, and they were talking about the book, and I was like, and I said, I actually think it's better than the book by quite a bit, and they both looked at me like I was a fucking moron, because that's like a very celebrated novel, and they were just like, what? I'm like, yeah, I think it's a way better movie I think the movie's way better, and I remember just the look they get, and like very close friends, these two were, and they looked at me like, what the fuck is wrong with you? How dare you even say that? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't say that's one of the greatest books of all time, and I would easily say that's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And that's just the way I would look at it. Like, if you were going to ask me, like, 100 favorite books, I wouldn't have One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in there.
No.
But the movie's, like, top
I
50
mean-
shit, you know? Like, it's, like, as good as movies get.
Ken Kesey is not exactly the most gifted author as far as those things go. As far as he is very celebrated and became a celebrity for sure. And he, in my opinion, didn't write a good book after Sometimes a Great Notion. But
I feel the same
I
way,
think
man.
the book would, yeah, the book is all right. The movie transcends it. The Jack Nietzsche score, fantastic.
Well, you know, it's just that thing with
The casting.
It's just Milos Forman, you know. It's like I think he's more interesting as a filmmaker than Casey is as a writer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think what he's doing in that movie is more interesting. I mean, I
He's
get
a true auteur artist filmmaker.
I get.
And you can look at Fireman's Ball.
No, he's one of
It's a
my.
masterpiece.
He's literally like one of my 5 favorite directors. I mean, really, I love Milos Forman. I love Loves of a Blonde. I mean, I'm a big fan. Amadeus, all that's, you know, Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, I think he's underrated. But
Loves of a Blonde, fantastic.
one of my favorite movies. But because I hear that point a lot, and I get it, because I do think Gene Hackman would have been really good in the role. I think he's like the only other person that could have played it well. And it's interesting to think about him and Jack Nicholson switching roles in certain movies. Because I could see it in my head. It's not what, like, I could see Gene Hackman in The Last Detail. It's not crazy.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it doesn't. It doesn't like offend me to think about like him in that movie. I'm like, oh, that would, yeah, he'd be really good in that, you know, or Jack Nicholson in some Gene Hackman roles. I would like to see Jack Nicholson in something like The Conversation. I'd like to see him play a role like that because he didn't play a lot of roles like that. But and I get where they're coming from, but yeah, it always bothered me because I'm like, well, I get what you're saying, but is that the kind of movie you want? You want this movie? Because they act like it's more complex, but you want this movie where this guy's just like a piece of shit and he's doing these bad things, and Nurse Ratchet's actually a good guy and he's out of line. So it's about this guy coming into this thing and leading these people with mental illness into dangerous situations, and then it's like his downfall. Because ultimately, why the movie's so powerful is it's this, you know, it ultimately becomes this, like, you know, going against any kind of authority or people who are trying to stunt or hold back any kind of like expression or form of expression or living, or what is social norms, what is taboo, what are you allowed to do, or what even is crazy.
And also, it's people in a horrible situation that has existed for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm. And I just think the scene where he's choking her before he gets taken out of bodyguards, I think it's so. I mean, this is personal, this is an anecdotal thing, but I think there's been maybe a shitty teacher, just some motherfucker. I don't know, but it's like I feel like there's sort of a rage against a certain kind of personality type that exists in our society, and I think him doing that is sort of how a lot of us feel about things. And I think it's really powerful because of it. And I think that people like that, the way she is portrayed in that movie, at least, or characters like that, I think they do lead to people like Billy's character committing suicide and what happens with that. They make people feel guilty for feeling, because, you know, people are like, oh, she's not doing anything wrong. It's like, Well, when she's saying that shit like, I'm going to tell your mother about what you did and all that when you didn't do anything wrong, I mean, that's shitty to me. I don't see that as like...
Oh, yeah, she's abusing her power.
Yes,
And
people who
it still
abuse
has, I mean,
power.
I don't think a lot of people are blind to the fact that R.P. McMurphy is a criminal and is also leading these people into dangerous situations.
It's just the Nicholson charisma. I do think that. I think that's why I always think he doesn't necessarily work as a villain. It's like a big issue with Batman '89 is that you kind of want the Joker to win because he's way more interesting and fun to watch than Batman. Like he kills people and he's the villain, but all the best scenes in that movie are the Joker with Jack Nicholson. Like that's the movie. I mean,
You've made the argument many a time.
if he wasn't in the movie, then it's not a fucking movie. It's just a boring ass Tim Burton movie, like every other boring ass Tim Burton movie. But Jack Nicholson isn't boring, so you're like, hey, this is really
It's never
fun.
boring.
And even in The Shining, it's like part of me is like, I kind of want him to kill Shelley Duvall, but he's just it is a charisma thing. He's just so goddamn compelling. It's almost hard. It's hard to hate Jack Nicholson. I don't know
It's
if
hard to take your fucking eyes off of him.
I don't know if I've
He's
ever
a true
hated.
original.
I've never hated him in anything he's ever been in, ever. I've been scared of him, but hate. It's like it can never cross that line. Like he's just too interesting. The world's less interesting when he's not in it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of get that point, but also like, well, what's wrong with that character in the movie being a likable, charismatic guy who's also a bad dude at the same time? Because a lot of people that do bad things are charismatic and manipulative and likable. It's not like that's not truthful. Like what? He's just supposed to be a guy that's like this asshole villain. He's not supposed to have likable qualities about him. Because even the guards like him for quite a while before you get to like the third of the movie when he's playing basketball or something. They like the guy. Like he's likable. So I don't know. I've never been on that shit. That always pisses. I mean, it's an interesting discussion, but I don't. It's something. But I do feel like, and I'm glad you don't do this because I was scared when we were first talking several years ago that you would be one of those people like, oh well, it's not literature. It's not like a book. It's not. It's like, yeah, it's a fucking movie, you moron. Like, why are you talking about it like we're book critics or something? Like, if you want to talk about a book, that's cool, but that's I don't know why you're acting like film as this separate medium. I get if you're talking about certain literature or pieces of writing, but it's like, okay, guys, Casey isn't that kind of right. Like, he's not at that level where this is so above like great movies because it's not, and it's bullshit.
Or like our discussion of the Queen's Gambit. I'm not saying Tifus is amazing, you know, this writer of high literature either. What I'm saying is Queen's Gambit was a perfect little narrative that could be easily followed and make a great movie or miniseries. And every change hurt the show and the characters. It's not that I would dislike any change. It's just that everything added made the show less interesting. And I understand that I have a bias. If you read the book first, you're going to have a bias, and you have to go in understanding that.
Well, see, I've often had that discussion with people because it's an interesting discussion to have. Because a lot of people say to me like, we should always read a book before you watch something. But I've made the argument, and it's a very like contrarian or non-mainstream point, is that I think you actually are better off to watch a movie first before you read a book. Because in my experience, when I've seen a movie adaptation of something first and read the book, I've always enjoyed reading the book and getting the stuff that wasn't in the movie. If a movie's truly great, it can't be spoiled. I've had movies that are like, don't spoil this, and then I watch the movie and I still feel the same way about it if I didn't know about it because it just works. And I watched A Clockwork Orange before I read the book, and I can say that didn't affect me reading the book at all. Like, not one iota. It was just a rich experience. Where I think if you if you do read a book and you go into, because a lot of people see these big movies and they start reading they go find the book after the movie or the show gets big. And I think it just helps books and helps people read more, where I don't think the opposite happens as much. I think if a book's big, people do go in with that bias on like it's not the book because there's going to be less detail because it's not a book. And then they start
Yeah.
making unfair comparisons. And I don't think you do that if you do the other way around. I think it enriches the experience of the movie because all the stuff that isn't in the movie, you can find. Like, let's say you watched Lord of the Rings and you never read the books, but then if you read the books, it's just more shit that you didn't get in the movies. So if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, it's just awesome. You know,
Yeah.
like Frodo spends years in Hobbiton before he goes on the journey with the ring in the books. He stays in Hobbiton for years after Bilbo leaves, but in the movie, it's like a thriller with its pacing. It's immediate. Bilbo leaves, and then like 2 days later, Frodo's on the run with the other hobbits. You
I'll
know,
give you some underrated examples. Catch 22, I think, is a pretty darn strong movie, but when you hold the book up to it, it doesn't look very good.
Mhm.
Lolita, excellent movie. Stanley Kubrick's Lolita, excellent movie. But if you hold it up to the book, it looks bad.
I've had the
Slaughterhouse-Five,
yeah,
very underrated film.
yeah.
And
George Rahill's really underrated film.
you hold it up to the book, and it it's these are beloved books. I get that.
Well, because the opposite can happen though, where a movie's based off a book, and then you read the book, and the book isn't that good of a book.
Yeah, many of you may have experienced that with Fight Club. Found out that, hey, movie's better.
I've had so many friends who try to argue that the Fight Club book's better, and I get so mad. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Because there's famous examples. The Godfather, the book is not as good as the movie. Forrest Gump's a big one for a lot of people. You know, Die Hard, the book that Die Hard's based off of. You know, where they're just kind of mediocre books, but they have like really good plots. And then
Cape Fear.
yeah, and then somebody turns it into a great movie because the idea is really good. It's just the right, it's because a book's literally like if a guy's not a great writer, it's not going to be a great book. It might just have a really great story to it. But if it's like you're reading it, where a movie's visual, so if it's a great visualist filmmaker like Coppola, it's going to translate really well. You know, where if you're reading the book, you're like, well, yeah, that had a good story, but it wasn't that well written. So I mean, I think that happens more than people think. I think people don't realize how many adaptations are just kind of based off like okay-ish books, and they only think about the great ones a lot of the time, the iconic books that have been turned into movies, because there's this pressure with it because the book is like a blockbuster book that it's famous.
I mean, Stephen King, I think, has had excellent luck in his books being turned into movies, where you have The Shining, Carrie. Maybe not Salem's Lot, but I mean, I enjoy Salem's Lot to some extent.
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me, Dead Zone, Shawshank Redemption, as we were saying earlier.
Misery, yeah.
Misery.
All really, yeah, some of the like most iconic movies ever made. So it makes his work richer. So people are like, wow, Stephen King's great. But then you read his books, and it's like they're an extra 1,000 pages of a backstory on every character in the history of everything going on in the town. And you're like, what the fuck is all this shit? I mean, I actually think Salem's Lot's a pretty good book, and it has all that stuff in it. But I remember like first getting into Stephen King and just being like fucking astounded at how fucking like how long he'll spend on things like that. It just blew my fucking mind. Where it's like, because if so many of those books, if they were just, and I'm not saying like, oh, it can't be long, but if you're writing an epic novel and it's just a lot of it's just backstory on side characters, it's like, man, if you cut some of this shit down by a few hundred pages, you'd have some really great books here. Which is why I think his short stories,
flashbacks and Cujo.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're like, yeah, that's why a lot of his short stuff is some of his best stuff. Because it's not filled with that stuff, and it's really good. Where
the The man needed the red pen.
Yeah, clearly never
Oh.
had like an editor involved with his work because he just got so successful so early that I don't think anyone ever, he just writes. Well, because it's kind of a waste too. He'll write something really interesting aside sort of thing, and it's like, well, man, that could have
Yeah.
just been a story in itself. It didn't need to be in this book. And I know people say that makes his work richer because there's so much detail and you get to know the character so well and all that. But I'm like, yeah, but it's still got to kind of flow as a narrative. Like, I mean, it's one of the biggest disasters of a book I've ever read in my life, and I still talk to people that act like that book's a masterpiece. And I'm like, have you actually ever read it? Or do you just think about the kids with Pennywise and that's what you think that book is? Because I think that's how a lot of people think about it. I think they think about, like, the famous stuff that's in the movies. And they think that's what that book is. I'm like, no, that's a book that's constantly jumping back and forth between adults and kids. It has cosmic monsters and space turtles. I mean, it's insane. It's like a crazy fucking book. Instead of him writing, like, he could have written like a 300-page book about this evil clown that was haunting these kids in this small town. It'd be a really good horror novel.
Oh shit. RoboCop, man. Clarence Boddicker.
Yeah.
What a hateable villain. I mean, he's so much fun. So much fun.
Has there ever been a character who's got fucked over worse in a movie than Murphy when he gets killed when he gets like just shot into pieces in RoboCop? Like they shoot his body parts off.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to,
it's insane.
Make a character hateable,
and
then they bring him back to life.
I mean, those guys are jerks. I mean, those
guys are real jerks.
I mean, they hold his arm down. I saw that when I was a kid, and my parents would be like, "Yeah, this is pretty fucked up." They hold his arm down with their like foot, and then blow his arm off and his legs.
I thought it was so cool as a kid.
I mean, it's I've never seen anything like it. It's crazy. They don't just like kill the guy; they like brutally rip him to pieces. I mean, it's the craziest like hero character gets like brought down I've ever seen it.
Yeah,
it's fucking nuts.
He has to rise again as RoboCop.
God, RoboCop's so fucking good.
Yeah, you've got some other great villain actors, and you got Ronnie Cox, Miguel Ferrer, Ray Wise. You know, he's possessed by Bob in Twin Peaks. Spoilers. Great villain.
True. Yeah, recent villains. Man, you know what? Recent villains, Mr. C, Kyle MacLachlan.
Mr. C, I was just thinking that. Kyle MacLachlan. Turns out he can be fucking creepy as shit.
Did you see Red Letter Media's finally did their review? They're doing their review on The Return.
No.
Yeah, it's Jay and that fat dude who's bald with the glasses that I don't know his name, but he does the David Lynch reviews with Jay.
No, I haven't watched that.
Yeah, because I always wonder. I was like, are you guys going to talk about this? Because I really want to know what Jay, like, I want to hear him talk about it.
I don't know. I don't know if I need to hear anyone talk about it.
I
talked it to death when it came out.
Yeah, it's pretty much just that. It's pretty much like the conversation you and I had years ago when we watched after the finale. It's literally just that conversation.
May have been the greatest. I mean, it's probably going to be the greatest television experience I ever have. Just as a piece of art coming out, it was like my Star Wars.
Yeah, someone's going to have to pull something out of their ass to like top that, because that really put things in perspective for me, where I was liking a lot of TV shows that are out, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, people aren't doing nearly enough with the medium. I realized I was settling.
Yeah, you were settling.
Yeah, because
sometimes you just have to go and watch. I mean, I'll watch Memories of Murder. I think a movie's really good.
Yeah,
I'll go and watch Memories of Murder.
You realize you're settling, yeah.
Think about it, and I'm like, am I settling?
It's true. It's an issue with watching really good stuff when you only watch good stuff because I used to only watch classics, like movies that are, I would only seek out and watch films that were considered great movies. And I watched them for so many years.
A garbage period. You're like, I'm just going to watch some garbage.
Well,
bit
because,
cleanse my
eventually
palate.
if you watch enough stuff, you start to appreciate bad movies or, like, comedy and things that are bad, or you start to appreciate the entertainment value of things that aren't necessarily high art. I mean, you can come around to that, but it is weird. If you watch too much good stuff, it really does make you, like, disgusted that you thought this thing was... Because, you're always, you're always more, like, let's say honest, because I think it doesn't come across on the channel, and I try to avoid it, but just like how cynical I actually am, and how much I don't like 90% of the stuff that comes out today, but I don't want to be that person. So I try to be more fair and less biased when I review stuff or talk about stuff or be open-minded. But I actually hate just about everything I see. Well, hate's a strong
Yeah.
word, but I think it's bad. Hate makes it seem like I had a bad time. I can have a good time watching a movie I think is bad. I like going to the theater and stuff.
Yeah, it's a fun experience.
Yeah, it's like a lot
But
of things.
there's a
It's
lot
like
of
going
things I
to...
consider a waste of my time,
Yeah,
in all honesty.
most movies and shows I've watched, I think are... Yeah, I don't think are very good. But I just don't want to be that guy because everybody hates that guy and says everything sucks.
Oh yeah, I mean everyone hates me,
Yeah, because...
and
And
I always just talk about how wow that was bad.
And I typically agree with you. I'm kind of like, yeah, it is kind of bad, but I just try to, like, be like, yeah, I don't want to be that guy. It's hard to make stuff. But then when you actually do go watch, like, yeah, when you watch a great movie or you watch a great piece of television or something that's really good, you're like, oh, stuff doesn't have to suck. You can actually make good
Yeah.
stuff. And we just don't.
Yeah, I hope Parasite reminded people of that.
I think it did.
It's like, hey,
It helped me in a lot of ways to remember that movies could be that good. I could say that seeing Parasite in the theater was probably the best movie theater experience I'd had in 5 years.
I don't know about like experience. I mean, Hateful Eight was a great experience. Seeing it in the theater on film, getting the program and everything.
Well,
But
I'll rephrase. I'll put it this way.
the movie,
I thought that I had... Parasite was getting so hyped up as like this masterpiece, new classic, and everybody was saying it was great. And I'd had so many movies over the last few years that's happened, where everyone says like this is like, it's got 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Moonlight, Roma. All the time this happens, and I watch these movies, and they fucking suck. And they're supposed to be the critical darling. I'm like, well, critics know what they're talking about. These movies must be good, and I hate them. And I'm like, huh? And so when this movie's a critical darling, I remember going to see in the theater. I'm like, well, Bong Joon-ho's not going to make a bad movie. But I kept thinking like, no, this isn't going to be it. This isn't going to be that thing where this is actually a classic. And I love it like when I watch great movies like Fight Club or like Memories of Murder. And then it was actually a great movie that I love. And I was like, oh shit, that was great. That was like a genuinely great movie.
Yeah.
That wasn't like, oh, this is pretty good for today. It's like, that was just a great film. And it was so successful. And I hadn't had that in... I literally can't remember the last time. I think it had been about 5 years or something since that had happened. If not longer. Because we live in a hype culture, so people... They give movies too much leeway now. I kind of miss the day of like the movie getting bad to mixed reviews and then 20 years later it's considered a classic. I don't think that happens anymore. I think critics either give movies good reviews for political reasons or because they think they're supposed... Like, I think everybody decided Roma was a masterpiece before they even watched it. And it's not. Or something like... I think like they just make these decisions. Well, Alfonso Cuarón made a 2-hour black and white film about his childhood. It's going to be a masterpiece.
the criticism is so impersonal too.
Yeah.
The aggregate sites, Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes and all of that, where it's just positive or negative, Oh,
Because
it's tiring.
I had so many movies
It's
like that. Blue is the warmest color. Like all these movies that everyone said,
yeah.
this is great. It happens a lot with Cannes, where it's like the Palme d'Or winner is always bad for me most of the time. We're like, oh, that one, it's hype, and then I watch it and I hate it.
Shoplifters won. That was
Yeah,
really good.
no, it's I mean, yeah, no, it happens. I mean, there's actually the last like 3 or 4 years they've all been pretty good. But especially like, yeah, the 2000s, I got burned so much. It just became so fucking annoying. Or Or directors, I think, just get a pass every time they make a fucking movie, like Paul Thomas Anderson. He can just make a bad movie and everyone says it's great. Or I even feel that way with Charlie Kaufman. Now I think people give him a pass because I don't really think Charlie Kaufman's made anything good for a long time. And I think people are still holding on to old Charlie Kaufman and acting like the stuff he's doing is great when he's not that good of a director.
That's an interesting take.
And
I don't disagree with it, but
well, because
I don't think Charlie Kaufman is cranking out crap, though.
no, I mean, a lesser Charlie Kaufman movie is still more interesting than most things. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's like bad, but I don't get it because I feel like I think now in retrospect, I think Spike Jonze deserves a lot more credit than he got for the Charlie Kaufman stuff and Michel Gondry. I think we used to be that I remember at least how it used to be. It was like Charlie Kaufman's a genius and all of this stuff's great and these scripts are brilliant and they make themselves. And I used to kind of feel it. I'm like, yeah, God, these are great movies. And then once Spike Jonze made Her, and I just think back on some of those movies, I'm like, and I see him direct his screenplays as opposed to other people directing them. It definitely changed my perception on the whole Charlie Kaufman thing. I also think he's like, I don't want to put him in like
he's not exactly the most prolific artist.
Well, I don't want to put him in like an M. Night Shyamalan thing either, but I think he has these gimmicks, and I think before we knew the gimmicks, they were really interesting. But I think he just does those same things. You know, when you've never seen his stuff before, and he does Being John Malkovich, it felt really fresh and interesting, or adaptation. But after you see it a few times, I don't think it's as impactful. And I even think I even think a little way like Eternal Sunshine and all that stuff, I don't know if they're as great as they were then. I don't know if Eternal Sunshine's as great as it was like when it came out and I loved it and watched it a bunch of times. It's like
dun.
Well, it's like
Jeez, man.
Well, it's like
I
a movie.
I don't want to get any death threats.
Well, it's
here.
a movie that holds up to repeat viewings, but it's also a movie that doesn't benefit from repeat viewings. And it's weird in that way.
Well, here come the death threats.
I know. I don't want to.
There you go, saying
no, because
Charlie Kaufman's overrated.
Yeah.
I tried to hold my tongue. I like Charlie Kaufman.
I do
think
too.
Adaptation's fantastic.
Adaptation.
Being John Malkovich, fantastic.
That's the. I mean, Adaptation in particular is like
So good.
a movie I'm in love with, like just
Same.
in love with, and I think it's amazing. But I also think Spike Jonze' direction and how he directs the actors and makes those movies is a big reason why they're amazing. I think Spike Jonze is a great director and a great visual director in particular. I mean, really, if he had made more movies or dynamic quality, I mean, it's kind of like coming out of the 90s, him and Fincher were kind of at the same sort of level. It's just Fincher went on and made these more iconic movies, and Spike Jonze has just kind of been this off and on thing.
I don't know about that.
Well, they were both the big music video directors. They were both known for being in commercials.
That's true.
And they were both known
All
for
those Beastie Boys music videos, man. You can't ignore them.
No, and the commercials. I mean, they were both iconic. They made iconic commercials and music videos, and they were very visual directors. And they both got these interesting screenplays. Like, you know, you got Fight Club and Seven, and Spike Jonze does Adaptation, and Being John Malkovich in particular. And it's like, wow, this dude's amazing. And then there's years with no Spike Jonze movies, and then he does Where the Wild Things Are, and it's like this huge disappointment. And then we have to wait even more years, and then Her comes out, and it's sort of like he's only made 4 fucking movies. And I think it's kind of his legacy sort of weird in that way. But,
yeah, I mean,
but if you actually think about it from a world from current working directors in a world perspective, I'm taking Spike Jonze over Paul Thomas Anderson right now by far. I mean, or a lot of these guys who are like critical darlings. I think Spike Jonze just doesn't make a lot of movies, you know. But I as far as I've seen in his work, it seems like the guy can pretty much visually do whatever the fuck he wants. He's very visually creative. I mean, the puppet stuff and Being John Malkovich, or just the way he edits his movies and cuts them. It's pretty complex stuff if you know anything about filmmaking. I mean, it's not like it's really complicated stuff. The way he could put a montage together, Spike Jonze, is just it blows my mind. I've always loved Spike Jonze. Um, and also just Michel Gondry, he didn't really make another good movie, and he's a great, famous music video director, but he gets that script for Eternal Sunshine, and what he does with it visually, it's part of the reason why that movie's so endearing, is the way it looks. And a lot of the stuff
I
that's
don't think,
great
I
is...
haven't been watching any Charlie Kaufman movies that I think are bad.
I've just been really disappointed. Like, I remember I was really hyped for Anomalisa, and a lot of people said it was great, and critics loved it, and I think it has huge issues.
I enjoyed it.
Schenectady, New York. The new one. Well, man, Anomalisa, man, it's got a lot in common with Lost in Translation and Her. It's very similar. This guy stays at this thing, and it's romance, and it feels like there's a sequence when like it's really starts to feel Charlie Kaufman, where everybody's like taking their faces off, and it's like everyone's a robot, and it's like trapped. And I was like, oh my god, this movie's turning into something great. And then what it actually turns into is so much less because I like when he goes off the rails crazy and he builds these worlds inside of worlds. That's what's really great about his work, is these worlds living inside of worlds. And I really dig it. But I don't know. Sometimes I think people give him a pass those movies, but I don't think he's actually lived up to it the last decade for me.
Well, he just hasn't made that much, in my opinion. But I don't know. Maybe we'll have a discussion about his new movie.
Yeah, I'm thinking of ending things.
Yeah, write down in the comment if you want to hear us review. Maybe I'll stand up for it.
Well, I don't know. I feel like it's this thing with like... I don't think he's a very good director is all I'm saying. And I think he should be criticized more for that. And I don't think he does because he's Charlie Kaufman.
Also, his competition, it ain't the best.
Like I still think his writing's good. Like I'm not knocking his screenplays, but I'm just like the whole directing thing too, it just feels a bit indulgent. I don't know, it doesn't really like the fact that like, oh, now I'm directing my scripts because I'm Charlie Kaufman and I'm this god. And that sort of irks me too. I think there's a bit of an ego there.
I think you're just jealous of him. I think you're just jealous.
I mean, yeah, do I wish
Charlie Kaufman,
do I wish I could write scripts and make stuff like Charlie Kaufman? Yes, I love Ned and Stacy. Yeah, of course. And I that no joking there. Ned and Stacy was great. Thomas Hayden Church. Yeah, do I wish I wrote adaptation? Yes. I'm jealous that I didn't write that movie. I wish I would have thought of that movie.
Well, I mean, hell, I'm jealous of him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
If I got to work with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah,
and he gotta be part of a. I mean, just being part of a project where Nicolas Cage was great.
Yeah, no, like
that's something to be proud of.
Top tier Nick Cage. Well, because people, there's been this thing lately where like people are saying like, oh, the great Nick Cage performances, like people are kind of having this retroactive thing with Nick Cage. And I sort of get it, because I think some of the 90s work hasn't held up well. But, yeah, you watch a movie like that or like Raising Arizona, and it's like, I love Nick Cage. Like, when he's like good, he's usually when he's working with good filmmakers. I mean, he's sort of one of those actors, unfortunately. He does
Honeymoon in Vegas.
He does
super underrated.
He does. I agree. I've often thought that was always going to be on underrated classics. That's like a fantastic. That movie feels like it made $100 million and everybody loves it, and it's like it's not. Like when I grew up, I thought that was a really famous, loved movie. I thought everybody loved Honeymoon in Vegas. I thought it was this big popular movie, and it's not. There's a lot of movies like that. Isn't that weird? Those movies that like. You grew up watching them on video or your parents liked them and you thought everybody liked them and they were famous. And maybe they did become famous on video, but then you get older and you find out like they were these hated movies. Like when I was a kid, I thought The Coneheads was a really popular movie. Everybody
you're talking about.
And everybody loved it. And then I look it up and it was this big bomb and it got bad reviews.
I thought Burbs was like this classic,
Yeah, no,
and it got horrible reviews,
and
and
it,
I love it. I mean, to this
yeah,
day,
no, that might be my favorite Joe Dante film. Like
that was mine.
that or Matinee, but I think the yeah, that Tom Hanks in the Burbs, like that's the Tom Hanks I want. Like, yeah, totally. Yeah, like I thought everybody loved it, and it was this iconic like classic, and then you find out it like and it's not like it didn't become a classic. I think a lot of people do like the Burbs and the Coneheads. I think people do, but I didn't know at the time they were like bombs. They got bad reviews. Like there's all these movies I grew up on, and or I'm like, that's not like one of the most popular movies of that year.
What do you mean everybody doesn't love Splash?
Slash was a successful movie.
Yeah, but I have a distinct memory of being in like
I
middle
love
school and talking about
Splash.
Splash and
Yeah.
not knowing what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yeah, Splash is great. No, yeah, because the Coneheads to me, like, even when I watch it now, I think it's really good. I think everything with Michael McKean and David Spade is like the agents. I think it's great. And it's like one of the better SNL movies, and yet apparently people are like, yeah, that's a bad movie. And I'm like, really? I didn't know. I guess I have shitty taste. But then there's these weird movies that I grew up with that like like Meet the Applegates was a big movie in my household and watched it all the time, and that's like a movie that didn't even get released. And like only was like on video and like has $100 VHS tape. Like these weird like it was so weird the era of video, and it's so lost now.
Yeah.
Is that there was just they used to make
this movie Drop Dead Fred.
Drop Dead Fred, yes.
As a kid watching that, I was like, man,
Watched it.
I thought that was a big hit.
Watched it 1,000 times. Yeah, Drop Dead Fred's a big one. Or I've seen it a million. Yeah, I've seen Drop Dead Fred. I know every scene in line of Drop Dead Fred. It's so burned into my mind. I watched it all the time, and now I'm like, wait, that movie was it's like one of the worst. It won Razzies and shit, and like everyone hated it, and I'm like, what? And it was a strange thing in the video era because we didn't have like the Rotten Tomatoes, and we didn't have that, so you didn't always know. Your parents rented movies, or there were movies on TV, or somebody owned a VHS, and you just watched it. Nobody gave you there was no preconceived notions or opinions stated on anything, so you just enjoyed things. And I think movies were more enjoyable in a lot of ways because of that too. Because there wasn't this whole culture around it. You just watched them because you liked watching movies.
Although maybe we're just being nostalgic for.
I think I think it's part of it. I think this not. But I used to feel that way. But I watched stuff that I liked when I was a kid, and it's shit now. So I know I can tell.
That's a terrible feeling.
I know I can tell the difference between like something still being good and not, because I used to think like, oh, it's just nostalgia, and then I'll watch a movie that when I was a little kid I like the Three Ninjas movies. When I was a kid, I loved those movies. My parents moved to the theater to go see Three Ninjas Kick Back, and I can't even watch. I mean, they're fucking awful. The Ernest movie, although I still think Ernest Goes to Camp is pretty good, but like Ernest Scared Stupid, I loved. And it's just not very good. The Trolls are great, but it's just not very. I tried to watch it a few years ago. I'm like, oh, this isn't a good movie at all.
I've never seen these movies that you're talking about.
Oh, the Ernest franchise, dude, you're missing out. They made like 20 of them. Jim Varney. And
Jim Varney. Okay.
Yeah, he was
Jim Varney.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the tough one, is when it's nostalgia balls. And you get all hyped, like, oh, I love this movie when I was a kid, and it's awful. Like, that one's hard to stay. Because you wanted to just bring back that feeling of nostalgia.
The Cradle
Yeah.
was one, I think. I remember thinking that was so good as a kid.
Yeah.
And it was shot near where
Isn't
I grew
that the
up.
one where the chick's, like, breastfeeding the woman's baby?
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And then movies I didn't like when I was younger, or like I didn't think were good movies, and now I love them. Because maybe they just weren't good kids movies. I've had that too. But Or I used to remember I didn't like chick flicks. I didn't like if a movie was considered a chick flick, and there were certain movies that my mother and sister liked that I was like, oh, I don't like that.
Classic internalized misogyny.
I know, and now I love a lot of those. Like I love Pretty Woman. Like I love that movie, and I'm like, oh, I was wrong. This is great. I was a fucking idiot. This is a great movie. Like this is a classic. I see why this movie made so much money. It's awesome. And then the weird ones were like, it's kind of a mediocre good movie, but I still kind of dig it. Like I always think of Flatliners as like a perfect example of that. Like just that like middle ground movie that's just kind of great in its mediocrity. Like I really dig those movies too, but I'm often upset. I'm too nostalgic. I'll admit it. I'm nostalgic for I'm nostalgic for conversations I've had. I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. Has there ever been? I don't know if there's a line that stings. I mean, because to me, you're just that guy, Chris Eichelman or whatever. That guy. But that whole thing and kicking and screaming. I'm too nostalgic. Yeah. I admit it. I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. I think that line's held up really well.
It has. That line is too familiar. I'm too familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm too familiar because I'm nostalgic for conversations I had yesterday. Because it's like, oh my God. It's so true. I'm nostalgic for everything. I'm just chasing nostalgia. I'm just chasing feelings that I had at one time because I want to remember how I felt before, and I don't even know if I can feel those things anymore. It's like there's feelings I used to have that I don't feel anymore, and I'm like chasing them to get them back, and I don't know if I can. There's feelings I used to have when I was really young that I haven't felt. I guess it's feeling things for the first time. But there's feelings I used to have watching certain movies or experiencing certain things, and I can't like feel that like how I used to feel about sexuality or like what used to gross me out or how I used to feel about food in movies. I remember when people would eat in movies, there were certain scenes that when I was a kid I was obsessed with certain things, and I watch them now and they're nothing. Like there's this movie Mom and Dad Saves the World. Mom and Dad Save the World, where these like parents get abducted by aliens, and and there's a scene early on where the dad's eating like grapes out of the fridge, and it's a shot in the fridge. And when I was a kid, I was like obsessed with that, and it used to give me this crazy fun. I watch it now, and it's just a guy opening a fridge and eating grapes. But for some reason, when I was a kid, like I loved it. Like, and I don't know why. These images that were burned in my mind that I used to watch like repeatedly, and I loved how it made me feel.
Here's a similar phenomenon. When you had such powerful emotions about a movie years ago, and you come back to it and you can't even handle it, the nostalgia of how you felt in that moment, it's now kind of flipped around. And I mean, Say Anything came on, and I had a lot of powerful associations with that, and I was like in a dark place, and I was watching that and I couldn't handle it. I was like, oh my God, what have I done with my life? I remember being 15 and watching this movie and relating to it.
Oh man. Well, there's that say
holy shit.
That Stand By Me thing that you never have friends with when you're 12. I don't think that just means people. I don't think you'll ever have friends like you did with those pieces of art like you did when you were like 15. Like Rob Sheffield has that line, was there ever a better band for teenage boys than the Doors? Because I've never liked the Doors as much as I did when I was 15. Even a lot of me now being older, I kind of don't like a lot of things about the Doors. But when I was 15, I love the Doors. I thought it was the best shit ever, and like now I'm like, yeah. There's a
age of comics is when you're 12.
Yeah, L.A. Woman's pretty good, but yeah, no, it's weird, like how those things anime. See, I feel bad for you in that you didn't get to experience anime, because anime when you're young, it's like nothing else. When you're like 13 or 16 and you're watching anime, especially the romantic stuff in anime, it's like you never get that back. I mean, it's great to watch the stuff now. I'm not saying it's not, but when you're like, as opposed to watching it when you're adult, but like watching those those shows or movies when you're like like watching the Gundam stuff when I was a teenager as opposed to now. It just had way more impact. Like
I feel like if you set yourself in that mindset, just if you try to a little bit, some of that stuff, if it's good, it'll take you there. You know, like His and Her Circumstances, the Hideaki Anno show he
Yeah,
did
of
after
course.
Ava. You know, if you just put your mind back into high school, just a little bit, it'll take you there. It'll take you the rest of the way.
Well, because I used to just feel so deeply. I used to be able to.
Yeah,
I used to feel
yeah.
so deeply about things. Like I really, really cared, and I would think about stuff a lot. It would hit me so hard, and it's really rare to get that feeling anymore. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Like I still, feel, but it's not like. I mean, I remember it used to be so like overwhelming and sensational and beautiful in a lot of ways, and profound.
That feeling of like pure romantic early love.
Yeah, like what I thought
You can have
romance.
that with you can have that with a movie too.
What I thought romance and love was, and then as the older I get, it's just not what it is.
And that's what's great about literature is I feel like it can always give you those feelings, in my opinion.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah, I don't think it goes
and
away.
and I think music can, to a certain extent, and so can movies. But I think that literature can really, at least for me, it really brings you there.
Well, it's almost like you get when you're a certain age, you don't have these like. It's like you're putting glasses on when you get older. Like you're seeing with a clarity that you're like, oh, this is the. I know so much more about movies now, so certain things that don't work or work, I know how a movie's made, as opposed to back then I could just like experience it. And now it's
Yeah, it's like levels of gauze over an actress's face in an old movie.
yeah,
The gauze over the lens when they show the actress's face. Oh,
and
it's like that with emotions. It's like, man,
I mean,
just jaded.
I'm not gonna lie. Even us talking right now, I'm starting to feel sort of like I did when I was 15. It's weird. I'm starting to kind of get a little bit like I'm starting to. Those feelings are burning into me a little bit because just us talking about it, I'm thinking about it. Because it does happen. It's weird how it hits you sometimes, like nostalgia. Like you'll be doing something, or you'll be in. It's so weird. I've had nights in my life out of nowhere where either it'll be a really cool night with a friend or something will happen and I'll get this weird feeling. Because part of the hard thing in life that's such a fucking bitch about it and about aging is that you have all these, like, when you're first going to bars, but then after you've been to bars a lot. So when you go into bars, you may still have fun at a bar, but it's not how you used to feel when you were like 20, and
Or you're 15 and you're partying with your friends, drinking cheap beer.
yeah, because or just things like being in the city. The first few times I really went and hung out in a city, but now I've been to a lot of cities and I've hung out in a lot of, like me and you a couple of years ago, we were walking around downtown after we saw John Cusack, and I remember walking around with you thinking like, this is fun, but I'm like, God, if this was like 7 years ago, this would feel so epic to me right now. But it's like, I've just done this a few too many times. So I'm having fun, but I'm not like, it's not what it was, And it's like this, yeah, it's this bitch with aging because all these things that are like great novelties, because you start checking things off like a list of life and interactions you have with people. I've had so many interactions with people now, and I've met so many of the same kind of people that it's hard for me to have an interaction or experience that isn't familiar or like something that I've had before. Because it's like not new. It's like, no, I've been. It could be different, but it's like similar to something that's happened to me before, or I've met this person before. They just weren't this, but there was a version of them that I met another time.
Yeah, yeah, the thrill of life.
Yeah, the thrill of life. Yeah, it's so
thrill
close.
Of life kind of losing its intensity.
Yeah, I
as you
wonder.
age.
I wonder if that's part of death, because I've talked to people who are older, and I don't think everyone goes through the same thing, but I've talked to a lot of people that are older, and I ask them, like, my father's age, he's in his 60s. I ask him, like, how do you deal with, like, being old? You're going to die, sooner than later, because that, like, I think about it, it freaks me. I'm, like, obsessed with death, and I'm neurotic. I'm very, like, Woody Allen about it. I hate the idea of death. I fear it all. I try not to think about it because it drives me crazy,
Same here.
And I hate it. And people always tell me I'm like a lot of people around. I realize a lot of people don't think about death as much as I do because they tell me they're like, yeah, you think about it a lot more than other people. And like, I don't really care. And I'm like, well, do you not value life? But then I talk to older people and I think about how that you kind of like start to lose power in the battery because you've experienced so much and it's harder to feel it. And they kind of tell me that the closer you get to it, I guess it's the only comfort I've ever had is they tell me the older you get, you kind of just, there's almost this like acceptance and wanting to die that you're at the end because you've experienced it to get to that point, and that the ending is just this natural thing that you accept the closer you get to it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I hope that's what happens. So that
Hope
it's
so.
it's comforting because in my thing, my fear is I'm going to be laying in a hospital dying and I'm just going to have a horrible time. Instead of being like, hey, I'm relaxed, this is meant to be. I'm more scared of like, oh fuck, I don't know.
I think, you know what I think? I think we had one intense reaction to Tom Cruise.
Talk about Tom Cruise and it's like, hey, so we're gonna die. I know.
Yeah. It's like I knew these things would happen, that life would have less potency to it. But then, it just happens. And it's, hey,
I know.
those feelings of being,
I know.
16.
Well, because everyone always told me when I was young, they're like, oh, you're gonna look back and think that was the best time because you never get any back. I'm like, oh, shut up. I want to be an adult. Fuck off. And I'm like, oh, they were right. Shit. All the stuff they told me is true. I miss being able to like, I miss having free time. I miss like being able to just have weekends where you hung out with people and you didn't have shit to do. Just being able to play video games and shit, like, or watch movies. Like you don't realize how like little free time you're gonna have later on. Like I guess I convinced myself it was always gonna be that way, that I was gonna have all this free time. And you're like, wow, I don't really have a lot of free time. I really have to like plan things around my life to get that time for myself, to have time for yourself, not just time to spend with other people.
Yeah. 20 will not come again. Takes from 70 springs a score. It only leaves me 50 more.
Yeah, this got depressing, but whatever. It's okay. It's what happens. All right, guys. That was the beef stew. I think that Tom Cruise got. I'll say this. Let me wrap this. Let's tie it back to the beginning. I think Tom Cruise thinks about a lot. I think often people go to religion to deal with something. I think that the way he's taking care of himself. I even think the dangerous stunts that he does in the movies, I don't want to say he has a death wish, but I think that dangerous side to him, that he does put his body and his life in the risk in these movies, and that he always goes for this big worldwide thing. I really feel like he feels like he has to make this huge change in the world and have this huge impact. And I think the movie started made him feel that way, and the Scientology made him feel that way. And even now, he's like clearly taking this COVID thing on his shoulders, like he can beat it. That's how he's talking in that rant more than anything. Like with this self-importance. He's bringing this Tom Cruise, like, it's up to us. We have to make this movie successful.
He's bringing some vitality, fighting off the cold hands of death.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not going quietly into the light. You know, and I think that's what I really like about Cruise. But I also think if there's anything to take from this, I think if there's any truth to who he is, he's just a super intense guy, and he's really intense about life and his career. And you know, so how many actors and movie stars and famous people, they don't put everything on the line. They do get lazy. They do take it for granted. Their best work's behind them. The fact that he's on a set and he's this passionate making a movie, isn't that what we want?
Yeah.
He gives a
Yeah.
shit. He's not there like fucking off on that movie, not trying to make something. Like, he's trying to make the best movie he can make, and is taking it really seriously, and he wants everyone else in there to take it seriously too. Like, this is an honor that we get to work on this set and make a movie right now when people aren't getting to work. And we have to set the example. Like, you should be honored to be here working on this, instead of like, hey, fuck it, it doesn't matter. You know, because, you know, I'm not, you know, the whole COVID thing, I get that, but like,
Hey, as Frank T.J. Mackey said, I will not apologize for who I am. I will not apologize for what I need. I will not apologize for what I want.
yeah, I think there's a lot of that
There's
there.
a reason. Yeah. I think that goes for old Tommy Cruise.
Yeah, I think he's more like Frank T.J. Mackey than people may know. I think there's a lot of that in there.
He ad-libbed all that.
Yeah, he didn't.
He didn't even know the camera was rolling.
Yeah, actually, his character's completely different in the script. He's a very sweet guy, very quiet. But yeah, he gives a shit, and I think, you know, we live in a world of apathy. Millennials are fucking apathetic. I know I'm a millennial. I know we are. We're apathetic as fuck. We kind of live in this nihilism. As we talk about how we can't feel things anymore and we're gonna die. But we kind of live in this nihilism, you know, it's a nihilistic world, and COVID just like it's really bad that it hit when we are a generation like this. So it was just a bad thing that we're a non-optimistic generation mixed with this really negative year. It wasn't a good match. But yeah, Cruz, I mean, fuck, he's upset that the whole theater thing and then it might be streaming. I think he's really like, I think it means a lot to him, and he wants it to last, and he still has hope that movies are going to come back and people are going to go see this movie.
Yeah. Every time he shows passion, people mock him. I think that's a common thing nowadays.
Well, you know, I'll say this. If there was an athlete yelling at guys in a locker room for like fucking off in a game or not doing something right, everybody on sports radio would talk about how that guy's great. If there was a coach going off on his players or a quarterback, everybody would be like, wow, he's dedicated. He's really bringing it here. But because Tom Cruise is an actor and that he's Tom Cruise, it turned into this whole thing where everyone's like, oh, he's crazy. You know, and it's just like,
crazy like a fox.
Yeah, I like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, although he might be crazy also.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say definitively he's not.
Yeah, I definitely think he's probably crazy. I'm not. I mean, you don't do what you do in Ghost Protocol if you're not a little crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess we're gonna be talking about. God damn it, man! Wonder Woman 19, for fuck's sakes. I mean, I just want to kill myself thinking about it, but I mean, man, fuck. God damn it. Patty fucking Jenkins. You know, I'm just gonna say it, the whole hype with Gal Gadot or whatever the fuck, like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't think
Is there hype around her?
Yes. Especially after the first one. I don't think she's that attractive, and I don't think she's a good actress. I used to think she was kind of attractive.
She was in the IDF, right?
Yeah.
You gotta respect her for that.
No, I do. I respect her as a person, but yeah, not in on it. I think basically I'll say this: if Chris Pine wasn't in that first movie, I would just completely hate that fucking movie. But I think Chris Pine actually does a lot of heavy lifting in that first Wonder Woman movie. But I don't get it. I don't get the hype with her. I think she's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, and I really don't. I mean, just even the
We'll talk
yeah.
about it next time.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's close this up.
All right, man. Thank you for stewing.
Respect the cock.
Yeah, respect
tame
the
cunt.
cunt. Yeah, obviously.
This has been Tom Cruise.